Well, this was an awkward time to review you. Hello everyone, my name is Adam Samuel. Welcome to my channel and my first ever video here. For those of you who don't know me, I am a TV commentator over on Reality Hour, a podcast channel I run with my co-host Eric. I've always wanted to dip my feet into the booktuber waters, so here I am doing that. I love to read. I read every single day, and about a month ago, I decided to pick up The Stand. For those of you who don't know, The Stand is a novel by Stephen King, and it's about a pandemic that spreads across the world and wipes out about 99.9% of the population. The story takes place in America, and as the pandemic spreads, Stephen King paints an incredible picture of the collapse of civilization. As everything's falling apart, one of the aspects that Stephen King chooses to focus on is the government. The government really goes out of its way to kind of hush up what the people are starting to call Captain Trips. And we have a lot of scenes early in the book where we just see the government essentially lying to the people and telling them it's all, don't worry about it. It's not true. It's not a real thing. Some people are getting sick, but you don't need to worry about it. Everything's fine. Now, where does that sound familiar? Anyway, so how I'm going to do this review is I'm actually going to split it up into 4 sections. We're going to talk plot, we're going to talk characters, and we're going to talk pacing. And once those 3 are over and we've kind of given the book a grade, we'll do some spoilers at the end, but I'll give you a heads up before we get there. So plot, right off the bat, the story itself is very well done. It's very well written. The story is a bit of a slow burn, I will say. It's really more of a character study. And what I can say of the early book is it has a way of making you nervous because you know this pandemic is going on, but some of the characters don't. And when they encounter someone who starts to cough, to sneeze, we know what's happening, but they don't. And you realize as you're reading this, that person's not going to make it. The closest thing I could think to describe it to would be when you go to the doctor to get a shot. You know what's going to happen, but with every passing moment that it doesn't, you feel your anticipation start to grow and grow. It's what makes Stephen King the master because he's just so good at making you feel these things without outright needing to say it. He can just give you these feelings through just his descriptions alone, and it is a masterclass that he shows here in this book. Something that really struck me was how Stephen King explains that after the first pandemic, there was actually a second one, and that was for the people who no longer had doctors to go to, who were little kids who no longer had parents to take care of them. It was moments like those that just it hits you where you live. It's really well done. And that just goes back to the whole character study of it all. It's focusing on these characters, trying to pick up the pieces of what happened. That said, I do feel there were some passages of the story that were a little bit long-winded. The book is over 1,000 pages, and for me, there were some things when I was reading it where I'm going, maybe it could have yada yada this a little bit. For me, the strongest part of the early book was the sections on Nick Andros's character. His role in the story was very well done. He's also he's a deaf mute, but Stephen King portrayed him like so well and so easy to relate to. His story, he was, in my opinion, my favorite character of the early chapters. The story really gets going though when we're left with the survivors and they start having these dreams about these 2 different people. There's Mother Abigail on one side, and on the other is Randall Flagg. And as these people keep having dreams about these 2 figureheads, you realize that they're slowly starting to essentially gather forces to their sides, one representing good and one representing evil. The rest of the book is just seeing what happens, which side is going to come out on top. There's a lot more to the story, but we'll save it for the spoiler section. Okay, so characters. There's a lot to go over here. There's a ton of characters in this book. I'm not going to go over every single one. I'm just going to go over kind of the bigger heavy hitters of the story. I talked about Nick a little already. He was, in my opinion, my favorite character of the book. But a second place easily has to go to Tom Collin, who was, oh my God, you can see I've read quite a few Stephen King books, and of the ones that I've read, I would say my favorite characters in the Stephen King universe, the most well done, I think, are Annie Wilkes, Holly Gibney, and now I'm going to add Tom Cullen. I think he was phenomenally portrayed. He is an intellectually disabled man who he has tics, he says weird things, he says MOON spells whatever. He has a different way of communicating, but that Stephen King portrayed him in a way that I connected with this guy. But the character I think was the most well done was Harold Lauder, who I can't really go into too far because of spoilers, but I will just say that his character development and the way Stephen King puts us inside his head was phenomenal. Phenomenal. This was a character who you would probably hate in real life if you were to encounter them, but in the context of the book and just the way we really truly see the way he works and the way his mind, how he sees things, can't help seeing where he's coming from in his own twisted way. Characters as I like, there was one that just I didn't get, and that would be the Trash Can Man. Because I read the unabridged version of The Stand, there was a stretch of, I think, maybe over 50 pages solely devoted to the Trash Can Man. And for me, this was the weakest part of the book. I feel like there would have been a way to kind of condense his story or either add it to another character. In the story, we also have Lloyd, who is Randall Flagg's kind of right-hand man. I feel like we could have combined those characters maybe because the resolution to his arc I felt wasn't as fulfilling because I was kind of having this. I wasn't connecting to him. His chapters were, like I said, the weakest part of the book reading experience for me, and I'm just left even now scratching my head going, I think there was a better way to handle this character. The book also has a really strong cast of minor characters, and I just want to also give a special little mention to Dana, who was one of the major highlights here for me too. Now, I want to talk about the pacing. Like I said, this is a slow burn, and like I said, there are some times in the book where you do start to feel it. One thing that really stands out is there's a lot of traveling, and you feel the length of the traveling. When they're traveling long distances, you first of all you get every part of that travel, whether it be camping, gathering supplies, you get every bit of it, and it's great, but it also does go on a little bit too long. There are portions of the book where I'm like, let's go, and we're kind of still stuck in this situation, and we're waiting to kind of get through it. And towards the middle of the book, there is a really major slog. Characters start to come together, and it doesn't take off as quickly as you would hope. There's still a lot of downtime, and you're kind of waiting for the big explosions to happen, but it's a slow burn. It's going to take some time to get there. The pacing, though, at the end, when things get real, things get real. People often criticize Stephen King for his endings, and here I do think the ending was good. I don't have the problems that some other people do. The problem I would maybe have is that the last there's about 50 pages from the ending that I feel really do start to drag, but the problem is they were also kind of my favorite at the same time. When I was reading this book, I would read at about 30 pages in a sitting, but when I got to that ending, I read the last 250 in one sitting. This book finishes strong. There are some pacing issues in the beginning, but when it counts, I think it really does knock it out of the park. Stephen King is a big-time author, but he also writes in a way that's very casual, and it's very easy for you to slip into the story. And for me, this book got me, I would say, around the 120-page mark with Nick. And once he has you, he has you. And this was a phenomenal entry. I totally understand why people see it as their favorite Stephen King book of all time. I don't know if I would put it there. It's in contention, I will say. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I would personally give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The reason I would take some of those points off is because there was some pacing issues, and I do feel like the Trash Can Man's character, I didn't get it. Let's talk a little bit of spoilers because those are always my favorite part of these sort of videos. So yeah, Nick died. He got exploded. But that whole segment with Harold Lauder and the bomb, when he hides it in the committee's house, it reminded me so much of Game of Thrones when well, this is spoilers for Game of Thrones also, when Cersei Lannister blows up essentially the sept. I think that's, I don't know how to compare it to something in real life, but there was a tenseness to it, and it got me. And I know they're going to be making this into a CBS original, and I think that for many is going to be the highlight of the book, because I think it was one of the highlights for me. While I was sad that Nick died, I loved that truly no one in this book was safe. I felt like any character could die, and I feel like that's in a lot of books and TV shows, people have plot armor. But here, I felt once Nick died, I was like, anyone could die. And then when we have the confrontation at the end, when we lose Larry, I got it, but I also, like I said, I just enjoyed that it could have been anyone. And it was so well done and so beautifully written, and I can't stress that enough. One thing I did find a little bit of a head scratcher in the book was that there's the committee puts together this plan where they're going to send spies to Randall Flagg's side of things to kind of get some information. And right off the bat, as soon as they start talking about this idea, I'm like, that is a bad idea. There is no possible benefit here. But the committee goes with it, and they send a judge, they send Dana, and they send Tom Cullen, which those three people are even worse to kind of send. The judge is someone who I feel like would be the prime person to have in a new civilization when you're trying to rebuild society. I feel like his character would be someone you would want to really hold on to, someone who you would want to teach other people what he knows. And they actually even bring this up later on in the book where they say, like, yeah, it was a bad idea to send him. I'm like, yeah, it was a bad idea. I can see what Stephen King was trying to do because it pays off in the end. But my problem is that it paid off, but not because it paid off because the story needed it to pay off. And I feel like that it was more that the committee kind of stumbled into having the right idea, even though they didn't have the original idea with Tom Cullen, because of Tom Cullen's disability, Randall Flagg can't sense him, so he was able to slip by, but they just got there on a fluke, and I feel like that's not as earned. My favorite scenes in the book, though, have to be, I have about 4 favorites of the book. Number 1 was the Dana and Randall Flagg kind of confrontation. I thought it was masterful. I truly, when I was reading it gave me chills. It was just so, you could feel it. I love it. It was just the slow reveal of what's kind of going on here with this dynamic, everything. And it was just an incredible scene to read. Harold's bomb being another scene that was just so incredible. The tension, my God, the tension. I also, the most emotional scene of the book, though, for me was when Tom kind of came out to save Stu at the end, when Stu's kind of, you're expecting that he's not going to make it, but he ends up being saved by Tom at the last minute. And that rescue was just, it gave me all the feels. It was so good. It was so well done. Another scene I kind of want to give a shout out to is when the members of the Zone are kind of all gathered, and they have this moment where they all sing Pledge of Allegiance together. And I thought that was a really powerful scene, and it was a very minor scene, but it was also, for me, it really stood out. It had an impact on me. It was really good. So those are my thoughts on The Stand. Like I said, overall, very strong book. Really enjoyed reading it. Since this is my first video, it was meant to be a little bit more informal. I'm still kind of learning the ropes on how this is all going to work. But if you've stuck around this far, people always say like, comment, subscribe if you want to do those things. I'll be back hopefully in another week or so with another video. Since I read a lot, I figured why not, once I finish a book, do a review, because why not? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.